Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock Blog, and I'm here with Kenny and Lady Chow Fung, and we're going to talk about Death Duel, a 1976 Chou Yuen movie. In Death Duel, everyone wants to kill the third young master for fame and glory, so he escapes from the death of the martial world, assuming the identity of a wanderer named Achi, but the wicked plans of Muyong Chaodi force him out of hiding to face the great swordsmaster Yan Shi-san. This movie has been remade as Swordmaster, and this is the original. It stars Derek Yee. So what did everybody think of this movie?
I thought it was a very interesting movie. Like it had its moments, but some of the parts, I think they introduced plot points quite abruptly at times, and it can lead to some confusion when characters are introduced with some depth and then they disappear after for less than 5 minutes on the screen. So it might be a bit of a chore to try and keep up with all the characters, but the plot itself is it's quite simple. I mean, we have one person who's tired of the martial world and he just wants to live in peace, but as with these things in all cases, it's never that simple. Grudges and then people seeking fame and everything just comes to a head. And I quite enjoyed the last fight scene as well. I thought it was quite an epic and apt ending to draw everything to a close there. So no, I enjoyed the movie, but it was definitely a chore to keep track of the characters at times.
And Lady Chow Fung, what about you?
I agree with Kenny. I really like this movie, but it is a bit confusing with all the people, especially when most of the people only stay for 5-10 minutes. And I think if they would have cut some of those people out, then the movie wouldn't have been so burdensome at points. But I really enjoyed this movie, and it is a very simple story that just got convoluted with characters.
Yeah, and I think we had maybe in the last podcast or the podcast before, we had kind of gotten into this subject of Chou Yuen and how his movies are sort of known for being a little bit on the confusing side. And I think this is definitely an example where the number of characters can do that. And what I usually would say to anybody interested in watching this movie is, don't worry about it. Just watch the movie, and then usually like after you watch them a number of times, things kind of start connecting a little bit better. But things get presented so quickly, and then like you said, like characters will just die. That you can if you hang on to that while you're watching it, it can be a little bit frustrating. So yeah, I get, obviously my take is I really like this movie. I think this is this is of the Chou Yuen movies, is probably one of my top Chou Yuen films. For me, it's up there with Heroes Shed No Tears and films like that. But I would agree with you guys that the number of characters can definitely make it confusing. Though I think for me, I kind of have come to enjoy that about these movies, because it creates the sense that you're being dropped in this world filled with people, and so you're just sort of you're confused, but it sort of serves the purpose of showing how big the martial world is. But it's interesting because I was watching an interview with Chou Yuen on the Blu-ray version of this the other night, and one of the things that he mentioned is, the reason why he liked to do Gulong books and turn them into film was because of the characterization, and that was one of the things he really liked about the books is the way that Gulong explores the characters. But he also said the complexity, and that was one of the things that he thought made Gulong good for turning into movies. So I think maybe that's the complexity of some of the things could have maybe been simplified. But yeah, so I don't know.
No, I can see what you mean with that. Some of the in the movie though, I think like there's some needless complexity there though. Just for I'm talking about the scene where the mute's wife sort of betrays him twice in the space of about 5 minutes. It's like, did you really need to have a plot within the plot there?
So you think maybe having her just do it once would have been?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was like, I mean, we knew that she was up to no good anyway,
Yeah.
right? It was quite obvious that she was the type that would just rat out whatever for the sake of, maybe she had the right intent at
Mhm.
heart, but you knew that she would just backstab the third young
Yeah.
master at the first possible opportunity.
Yeah, I think yeah they probably could have easily done that as one deception. I think what they were trying to do was get you to think that she might not be as bad as it seemed, and then show you no, she is as bad as it seemed. But you could have really just probably done it with one, and it would have achieved the same result. Um, but yeah, that whole scene with the bone racking powder for me is one of the most difficult parts of the movie to watch. That there are two moments where the Achi character has to deal with the bone racking powder problem. And in the first one, they just slice open his forearm, but in the second one, they really sort of start digging in, and they crack open his bone. And I find that I cringe every single time.
Yeah, me
The
too. I thought
you
that
know
was really gross, and the blood and the blackness just oozing out. That was just really, really gross for me. It's always hard for me to watch that scene to the second.
yeah
It was definitely unexpected because, generally speaking, in wuxia movies, you don't see that level of, I say gore, but it's pretty tame by modern day standards,
yeah
of course. But in this sort of movie where you get like fake blood splattered everywhere, you don't really expect that. You have the scene where a guy is literally just like digging a knife into a forearm, and not a very roughly performing surgery on an arm, just like using a knife to pry apart the tendons and say, "Oh no, your arm, your bones are black" or whatever, and trying to sprinkle powder into it. It's just like, ooh.
Well, I mean, and it's practically a theme in the movie, like how torn up his arms get. He gets cut up at the brothel, and his arms get infected, and Zhao Li and what's his name, Mao Tzu, their mother basically, heals his arms for him, and then you have the bone racking powder, and he has to get his arms open twice. So there's like three scenes where his arms are just in a terrible state. Um,
It's funny because at the brothel scene, after that, you get people, sort of on the trail of the third young master asking, "Oh, there was a young man who got stabbed and nothing happened to him." But as a viewer, you're like, well, nothing happened to him. His arms got cut up pretty bad and he got infected, and he probably would have lost his life if he didn't get the appropriate medical care. So I don't know why they were using that as sort of the metric for finding someone worthy.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty
oh, go
pretty
ahead.
weak in the subtitles in the Prime version. It says he was cut with a knife without any suffering. It's like, okay, really? He had a lot of suffering when he got cut through the knife. He was bleeding, and it gets infected and all that. Just like Kenny said, it was. But how would you know that's the third master?
Yeah, I think it was very hand wavy. I guess what I thought they were referring to was that he didn't really flinch when the guy stabbed him. Like he just kind of took it. Which in the Swordmaster movie, that's kind of how it's done. But yeah, I think it's certainly it's one of those coincidental things that you sometimes see in these wuxia movies where the explanation it really wouldn't necessarily lead you to the conclusion that that's the third young master. He just got stabbed in the arm and didn't really say anything. But the mute could have easily done the same thing because he wouldn't have said anything if he had been stabbed in the arms on account of being a mute. So, I don't know. That I think you guys are probably both right about that plot detail.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's sort of implying that the third young master has his own issues. Maybe he's desensitized to pain.
Well, I think he hates himself at that point in the movie, so he thinks he deserves it. I think that's what they were trying to do. Is he just is I mean, because they mentioned that he kills like what was it, like hundreds of people every year because people and they emphasize this over the movie. You keep seeing people come after him and wanting to kill him as soon as they find out he's the third young master because he's the supreme swordsman and everybody wants to get the glory that comes with killing him, and they don't care if he's like tying his shoelace or whatever, and they're gonna they'll do whatever they can to kill him, even if it's dishonorable.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Like so using the Doctor as an example, he was perfectly happy to use poison on the third young master, and somehow being able to kill the third young master via underhanded means would somehow add to his glory. Which, I'm not sure that's. I mean,
Well, I
it
think he
doesn't
would have
really.
lied about it. I don't think he would have. I presumably what I assume would have happened if his plan worked is he would have killed the mute and his wife, and he would have made sure anybody that was gonna say anything would end up dead.
But
And
the thing is, like, given his martial arts skills,
Mhm.
if he can't actually kill the third young master, then the same fate is going to happen to him. He's going
Yeah,
to
that's a
have
good
like,
point. That's a good point.
it's a general theme in Wuxia movies, in that there's the people, the antagonists tend to have very short views of what would happen if their plot were to succeed, right? So,
Yeah, they don't think out like 8 steps ahead. They're just thinking like, okay, kill Achi, and then get fame, and then they don't think of the part where everybody else comes to kill them. Um, but I love
I,
that doctor character played by Hugh Hua. He was very, I thought, just so pleased with his own act of deception. Um, just he basically has tricked everybody in the room, and and the way that the arrogance that Yu Hua brings to the role is really enjoyable.
Yeah, and, again, that I feel like that doctor was a very key part of the plot there. So it was necessary. Some of the other people that showed up, for example, like um, the twins. They were supposed to be twins anyway. The brothers.
Yeah, the
brother.
brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I
could have
would-
taken them out of the story and it would have been fine.
mm.
I thought.
They serve very little purpose.
I would agree with you. They're not essential to the story, and they're the Yumien brothers. And one of them, Ku Quan Chung. Remember we were talking about Lady Chow Fung when we did Swordmaster, how he was in that. This was the role that he played in this. Was one of the Yumien brothers, but I feel like they got some really cool scenes though, like the whole scene where they have the fight with Achi at the White Tiger Society headquarters, and they trick the two samurai guys into going down each corridor to chase the woman and stab them through the chest. I think those scenes, they're not essential to the story, but I enjoyed them, so I liked having them in the movie.
Yeah, they definitely add. It doesn't add to the plot, but it adds to the sense that it's world building, right? I mean, it shows that there are people out there with skills as well, and who do their own thing. And it's not just all about the third young master, really. I mean, even if he wasn't there, there'd be things going on, right?
Well, and I
They're
guess
like-
go ahead, Lady Chaofeng.
From what I thought in the movie, that they were if Third Master was 1 and Yan was 2, then they had to be 3 and 4 since they seemed to get more scenes than everybody else. And when they were fighting Yan Shi, whatever his name is, when they were fighting him, they said that their only rivalries were the Third Master and him, and so they had to be 3 and 4. I mean, which there's always a 3 and 4 and someone coming after you if you're 1 and 2. So I mean, they're kind of important, but not really important.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say is where I think they maybe add to the story is in that one of the ways that they demonstrate how good those guys is they basically have them kill everybody. They kill they kill the Black Society and the White Tiger Society, on their own pretty much. And I think that helps show you how good of a swordsman Third Young Master is when he ends up killing them. But it's not essential to the story, but I think it adds to that aspect of it where you realize that the Third Young Master is obviously that good if he can kill these guys who just wiped out a whole room of up to that point maybe the most powerful characters other than the protagonist and his nemesis. But yeah, I think it's definitely not like it's not a you know, if you did remove them, I think the story would still function. But I feel like that it would be a flourish to the tale that is you know, I don't know, absent.
So, what did you think about the choreography? So, you mentioned, yeah, using the well, their name in Chinese with the Jade Face Brothers, using them to sort of showcase the third young master's swordplay skill there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one thing that sort of struck me in the movie is that despite yeah, everyone's saying how skilled the third young master is, and how skilled like Yen Shisan is, like it's not really reflected in the actual visual, like in the choreography itself.
Do you mean
so
like that the styles aren't distinct, or that you just couldn't tell how good they are based on their
well,
fight?
both really. I mean, there wasn't really much style. Like we don't know what style the third young master uses. That's never really mentioned. He's just a sword master, right? But the yeah, Yen Shisan is supposed to have his 13 like murdering strikes, right? He's supposed to be able to kill any opponent in 13 strikes, and I feel like other than the fact that other than when it was first mentioned and when he first showcased it to kill like the group of people in the opening scene, it became glossed over. Like there wasn't anything distinct about any of the fight scenes. All we know is that the people there are using a sword, and there wasn't there wasn't techniques or anything special about the way they were using it.
Well,
if that makes sense.
I think so in that I think in the scene where they showcase it in the opening, really all he's kind of doing is counting as he's attacking. So it's if you remove him counting, it doesn't even really look all that distinct. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't look like 13 sword strikes. It looks like him, you know, moving around with a sword and killing people. But I think with the Cho Yuen movie, I don't think, you know, he's not Cheng Che. He doesn't, you know, he's not. And I should say, I think the fight choreography on this was done by Tong Kai, who's a really good fight choreographer. There was another guy too, Huang Pei Chi. But Tong Kai, I know, you know, his work is very good, and I think it's really more about the style that Cho Yuen wants. He wants more of a uniform, beautiful style that you know looks graceful across the screen, and I think you see this in all of his movies for the most part. You know, there's a moment when Achi's using open hand strikes where things kind of get broken up a little bit, where it looks a little bit more like classic kung fu. But really, I think Cho Yuen essentially wants people jumping around and swirling with swords and almost fighting like they're dancing. And it's very
I think he does that well, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I think. It's that kind of fluid sort of style of movement. And so, you know, I feel this movie does that well. I feel, you know, there aren't any moments where it breaks down for me and I'm like, oh God, that looked terrible. It all looks very graceful and very flowing, and I think that's what Cho Yuen wants. I think for Cho Yuen, it's almost more about the characters and the bravado of the characters. Do you know what I mean? It's more about the moments when they're posturing and they're holding their sword and they've just killed somebody. Those are the more crucial moments in a Cho Yuen movie. So I think it's all more about sort of the stylized gracefulness of the fighting, not oh, this is this style or that style. He's not really that kind of director. I mean, they might be talking about styles, but like you said, you can kind of replace one character's fighting, you know, sword play with another, and you don't really, you know, you don't really see anything different, except maybe for the David Chang character at the end where he's doing all the flips and stuff. But
yeah, not saying that the choreography in the movie is bad. It's just that, in my opinion, it lacks a little bit of character. Just the fight scenes. I mean, you're right in that a lot of these sort of the important parts in the fight scenes are the posturing and the posing that the characters do after their moves. But just from my point of view, it's the actual fighting itself. It's a mess of whirling and twirling.
Yeah, no, and I would say you're not wrong. That's Cho Yuen. I've seen a lot of Cho Yuen movies, and when every fight scene to me, what I think in my head is men twirling with swords and robes. Like that's sort of the, you know, and I think that's what he wants. I think he does. That's what he's after, and so that's what he gets in these movies.
I totally agree with you on that one. It's a lot of twirling and swirling with swords.
Yeah. And I would say Cheng Che, if you want the distinct sort of more broken up styles of that's a better director to go with than a Cho Yuen. Um, but yeah, it's very, I don't know what the word would be, but it's very sort of you can almost picture like musical. It's got like a musical quality to it where it's more about the flow of the human bodies across the screen than. But yeah, I don't think you're wrong about that. I don't think you're wrong about that at all.
And yeah, well, like you said, a lot of Troyan movies seems to be about the characters. So, did you have any thoughts about any particular characters that stand out to you other than the Doctor?
I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting characters. I mean, I guess if I had to say who my favorite character in the movie is, it's actually probably Yan Shi-san. And that might have to do with the actor and the way he plays him more than the character itself. But also, Chow Di in this, I think, is like this really villainous woman. She's totally different in a lot of ways than she is in the book. But she's a very vicious character. I liked the mute's wife as well. And again, that might have more to do with the actress playing her. And I'm trying to think. There definitely were a few characters that I think leap out at you. I'll leave David Chang's character for other people to highlight, but I suppose like I said earlier, the Yumien brothers I think are sort of interesting characters that kind of pop out. They're not essential to the story, but they have a real identity, and they're not really as evil as some of the other characters. They're just after the glory of facing the third young master, and so they have a little bit of honor to them. But I don't know what characters leapt out at others.
No, I definitely. Go ahead.
I like the David Chiang character at the end. His lunacy, I thought was a bit over the top, but that was perfect for a Chor Yuen movie. I thought. Just the way he was so crazy, and you really didn't know exactly how he fit into the story and what was going on with him. He was very mysterious to me. The only thing I could really collect from his part in the movie was that he was Chudi's brother.
And he was. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, we can almost like, I know that Kenny, you're gonna have a point or two that you might want to raise about him because you had sort of a theory about that character, but yeah, I like that character too because I think like David Chang is very charismatic, and the only real problem with that character is you only get him for about 3 minutes. He like blazes across the screen and is just wild and maniacal, and then he's gone. But he's a real and it's totally crazy what happens with him. It's like there's this duel between these two characters, then he shows up and fights them, and then he just slaughters everybody, on his own side, and then he runs off, and he's gone. And it's one of those like just like almost a zany moment in the movie.
Yeah, it was that. So his character is actually the second brother, I think, of Chodi. Mm-hmm. And the reason why he is such a lunatic was because he apparently practiced the martial art backwards, which led to martial deviation, and that made him go mental. And it's funny because the movie claims that the martial arts that he was using was the 9 Yin manual, which is a very prominent technique from Louis Cha's novels. Along with the 9 Yang Supreme Manual that it's always mentioned there. So Brendan and I were talking, and Lady Chow Fong and I were talking about this before the call, and we sort of were wondering if for whatever reason Chor Yuen decided to insert a Louis Cha character into his movie in the form of David Chan's character.
Yeah, because you were saying he's basically Ouyang Feng, right? Like he's
because Ouyang Feng from Condor Heroes learned the manual backwards, and then he became crazy, and and in sort of the series, his depiction is always really like he is a master of martial arts, but because of his craziness, he does things very erratically, and that sort of is reflected in the way David Chan's character sort of jumps across the screen when he's fighting with the third young master and Yan Shi-san. And and then to the end where he just kills everyone and then he laughs and then he just jumps away. It's a very Ouyang Feng thing that's his usual depiction of how he acts anyway.
I think you might be right because I read the Third Young Master, the book, and I can't recall if there's a character like that in the story. There's so many characters in it, but I don't think there is, and I think that character is really meant to be Chow Di and Third Young Master's son, because they have a son in the book, and he's not crazy, but he is kind of a jerk, and so I feel like they just sort of they might have replaced that character with Ouyang Feng, like you're saying, but I could be misremembering, so it's possible I just completely forgot that character was in there, but I think that's the case.
Yeah, and actually another thing I really like about the sort of the grudge between Chow Di and the third young master is that we have no idea what it is. We have absolutely no clue what happened between them. I mean, the only thing we really know that is that she's tried to kill him like 46 times in the past already, and I like the idea that at this point, even to us viewers, it doesn't matter what the original cause of this grudge was. It's so deep seated within Chow Di's character that it's going to be a grudge regardless, and I feel like that's one of those nice little things where it's like it doesn't matter what happened in the past, I will still hate you regardless type of thing.
And I love the line where she says, "I've already killed you 46 times, so obviously I'm not going to try to kill you, again." It's like, if it hasn't worked 46 times, I'm not going to bother a 47th. Like, that's the magic number. But yeah, I don't know. I like that character. In the book, she has a much more legitimate reason for wanting to kill him, and it has to do with their sort of romantic history. And like I said, they have a kid together. But in Swordmaster, they kind of get into that, but there's no child. They kind of write that part of the story out. But again, in Swordmaster, there's a little more legitimacy to the grudge. And this is just, she just really wants to. She just seems not to like him and wants to. Wants her Mu Young family to be sort of the supreme sect in the martial world.
But isn't that reason enough to hate him? If he's number one and she wants to be number one, that's in this kind of world. That's all you need.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's all that's needed. And that's that. But I think that seems to be the driving motive there. She just wants to rule the martial world through her crazy brother. Which totally backfires on her in the end, but
yeah, it's good that she got her comeuppance in the end. I think, someone who has tried to, done so much evil in the name of trying to raise the family to the peaks of the martial world. I mean, should have some sort of poetic justice there. Some sort of good bad ending for their evil deeds, right?
Well, and I know we talked about this when we did the Swordmaster discussion, so we should probably bring it up again. But there's also the love story component to this movie, and it's very tragic. I've already spoiled 8 things, but just spoiler warning. Zhao Li dies in this. And she dies at the hands of Chow Di, who basically kills her in order to force Third Young Master to come out of hiding and fight Yan Shi-san. And so it's like a really, really ruthless move. And then at that point, there's that famous scream scene where Achi screams and summons all his men, and he basically just kind of gets his groove back in his Third Young Master again and decides not to be Achi anymore. And that scene is mirrored in Swordmaster in an interesting way. So I'm particularly interested in Lady Chow Feng's thoughts on it in this one, because I know it's much, much more of a downer in this case than in the Swordmaster movie.
Yeah, I like the way the Swordmaster ended better. with the lovely couple living happily ever. Well, we really don't know if they lived happily ever after, but we know they go on a journey together. I was sad at this part because I wanted them to end up together, but Chowdy is so ruthless that she couldn't let anybody be happy in the movie, so she had to take his one piece of happiness away in order to force him into the fight, and then get her brother to kill both of them, which backfires. But yeah, that part made me sad.
It was definitely sad. I would agree with you on that. It was definitely
just the
sad.
whole funeral scene was, I thought, a nice scene where he comes out of his makeshift dressing room. He went, I guess we don't see him go in, but he goes in dressed as Achi, and he comes out Third Master in his regal clothing, and he asks for his sword and his armor, which his armor turns out to be gold lame, which is hysterical.
Yeah, he got a gold lame martial robe. That's a very Cho Yuen touch, by the way. That it's like
exactly.
it's like the Elvis of the martial world. It's a beautiful looking outfit. If anybody's seen the Death Duel cover, it's oftentimes sort of the most prominent thing on the cover. But I also like how they build up. It's so hopeful before that. Like they have this whole thing where he's talking to Zhao Li, and he's they're talking about how they're going to wait for each other, and how they're clearly in love, and they're going to become husband and wife. And then he has a scene where he's buying clothes for her when he comes back from getting his arm wounded, and then he arrives and she's dead, and it's really tragic, but it's also really existential because there's this whole line where he talks about how third young master can only ever be third young master, that he tried to be Achi and it just didn't work. He's doing this thing where he's running away from his problem, and his problem is he's the supreme swordsman of the martial world, and people are always trying to kill him, and he has to kill them to send them off. And I thought that line sort of really got it, like one of the existential themes of the movie and the book. But yeah, so I think that to me that's one of, like, it's a very sad scene, but it's a very moving scene, and it just sort of it marches to the finale from that point on. And I feel like the tone shifts dramatically too at that point.
Oh, definitely. The tone got a bit more serious after that, especially the primal scream was really shocking the first time I saw it. This wasn't the first time I saw it. It's like my fourth or fifth. But the first time I saw it was like, wow, you didn't know that someone, as Achi, he was so mild-mannered and sweet. You didn't think something like that would come out of him. But to me, that was the breaking point, was the primal scream signaled the end of Achi and the return of the third master.
Yeah, I thought it was a cool scene, and like a cool transformation of a character, where suddenly all of his men show up. I think they're kind of messing around with time. He screams, and all 30 branches of the Supreme Sword Sector show up. And are ready to receive his command, and he's like, "You go do this. You go do this. You go do this." And it's I enjoy that moment in the movie.
No, it was definitely, visually speaking, I thought it was quite impressive though. They cut the scenes together, and the scream was quite a powerful moment there. You get the sense of the despair he feels. Like this is a person who wants to live a peaceful life, and unfortunately, because of his name, his fame, he loses the one thing that's left, that's sort of giving him hope that he can achieve it. And it's sort of it's mirrored with sort of Yan Shisan's character as well. When he's doing the treatment for the third young master, he says that sort of thing. He hates his own name. He hates his name, Yan Shisan, because it restricts him. Like, because of that name, he has to strive for number one now, and that's ultimately the reason why they have to fight in the end. Is because he is Yan Shi-san, and he and the other person's the third young master. They're destined to fight, type of thing, and it is very sort of bittersweet there. I mean, you can tell that they have a lot of respect for each other, and I think even without the whole Yan Shi-san saving the third young master part, like if they had met normally under in more regular circumstances, they could have been fast friends. I mean, they seem to get, neither of them were bad people. They were just very focused on their martial way and became too famous for their own good.
Well, and Yan Shi-san becomes a healer in this. He's the one who heals Achi, and he's mastered this incredible medicine. So it's interesting that he goes from being like this killer to this healer. But another
a bit of story behind that, actually. So they mentioned like Hua Tuo, which is who is a very famous doctor from Chinese history. I think during the Three Warring States period, and he is the creator of general anesthetic, or
they called it
mixture.
Wu-Ma powder in this, right? They called it Wu-Ma powder.
And that's basically what Yan Shi-san was making, was general anesthetics, so that he could treat, so they could do like open wound surgery by the side of a river.
I have to wonder how sanitary that was. He's literally like hammering a chisel into his bone right by the river, and it's better than nothing, I suppose. But also he gives that terrible story of the trying to master the guy who tries to master the recipe and tests it out on his wife and daughter, and he drives his wife mad, and he causes his daughter to go blind, and then Yan Shi-san has inherited this prescription, and so it's an interesting scene. It's again, it's one of those like little flourishes that I think kind of like maybe adds to the theme, but isn't essential to the story. But there's also the other there's that in scene where the two cameos occur. There's a Ti Lung reprises his role for Magic Blade here to Swordsman Fu, and Lo Lie plays Han Tung, who's from Killer Clan. So you have these two characters from other movies show up at this in scene where Achi is kind of having a little bit of an epiphany about human nature, and I thought it's a very quirky scene because those two actors show up, but it's also very interesting, and also it's a humorous scene because there's this Confucian scholar who Achi basically is dying. He has this bone racking powder in his system, and he knows he has 3 days to live, and he's asking everybody, if you have 3 days to live, what would you do? And the scholar's like basically giving this really respectable answer, and then he grabs the guy by the collar and is like, no, tell me what you'd really do, and he's threatening him, and the guy's like, I'd go to a brothel and drink, and like he just basically indulge all of his physical pleasures, and then it's like the guy reaches his cracking point, and he just confesses to everybody, like, I've been studying these books, and all I want to do is these things, and I never do them because I'm studying, and it's just this great moment. And then he does the same thing to the daughter of the innkeeper, and she basically says, I'd find a man and sleep with him, and the father freaks out, and it's this moment where like the niceties of society just kind of crumble. And I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on that scene.
Yeah, I love that scene. I thought that the truth of human nature really came out in that scene with the scholar and the chaste young widow. I mean, she really never even got to marry her fiance, but for 10 years she had to be chaste, and they gave her this tablet, and she's telling exactly what she would do. And I was like, good for you. And the scholar too, they were like, he's our teacher and he's so upright. And then he goes, I'm going to go a whoring and a gambling. And it's just like, what?
It's a very unexpected moment in the movie, and I think the woman has a line like, "I've heard it's wonderful to sleep with a man, so that's what I would do." And the father's like, "Oh my God, how can you say that?" And they kind of run off camera, I think, sort of bickering about it. But yeah, it's sort of like a moment where like everybody just sort of reveals what they really want, and I don't know, like in Gulong books, it's like there are always like these pauses where he kind of will. he'll kind of just say something that's meant to be really profound about human nature, and that's kind of what Achi does after that. But yeah, I know, I thought it was a fun scene.
And I like the cameos too with T Lung and Lo Ye were really excellent. I liked seeing. I've never seen the Magic Blade, but I like Lo Ye anyway as a cat when he plays in movies. And my favorite part of his fight scene was the end. He's all done and he wipes the man's blood on his face.
Oh yeah, that's a great scene.
That was a little eccentric there, but yeah, I liked
Well, he
it.
got blood on his hand. He's gonna have to put it somewhere, I guess. So why not your face, your own face? Just smear it on. Yeah, it was. I've always been confused by that. I don't know why he did that.
I don't either.
I feel like it's an obvious thing. Like you're just meant to know why he does it, but I really have not been able to come up with an answer.
And I think it has to do with Killer Clans, but I have to go back and watch Killer Clans again to see if there's some kind of connection between
Is it something simple, like the fact that he is from the Killer Clans? I assume he is a killer of some sort.
In Killer Clans, he's one of the most badass characters. He's like the guy that Luca Brasi in The Godfather, the guy that like they have to get rid of because he's like the Godfather's like killer. He's kind of like that type of character. They have to. In fact, I think Killer Clans might. I'm pretty sure that story was meant as like a remake, not a remake, but like a. It was very much inspired by The Godfather, I believe. And he's kind of like a Luca Brasi character. They got to get rid of him before they can even touch the leader of the clan. So
I think maybe it's sort of how when you get like intimidating scenes where people lick their knives, sort of thing. But he's just like, well, I already killed everyone, so I'm just gonna wipe my face with the blood of my enemies.
Yeah, I get that must be.
You're right,
just...
Kenny.
What was that?
I said you're right, Kenny. It could just be simple as that.
Yeah, that's probably it. Because I just always try to think. I it just always perplexed me. But it's really effective. It's like a very visually striking moment. And yeah, and he's got this great weapon. So that this character, he's got like a circular hat with the hole in the center that he puts over his head. And when he takes it off, he pulls out like it's basically like a round saw blade. I don't know what the name of the weapon is, but he fights with that, and I think like a long pole in the other hand.
Yeah.
And he's just a you see him in this movie. He's a real killer, and in Killer Clans, they really build him up as a character. But yeah, he has that moment. And then T Lung's character in Magic Blade, he fights with like an L-shaped blade, and in this he's given up the sword life and he's using a stick instead, but the stick is also shaped kind of like his sword from the movie. So yeah, I like the cameos in this.
Yeah, I liked how he gave him a little piece of wisdom too about how the man that you want to meet is over by the river, but you're eventually going to have to kill him too. So he's going to cure him, but later somewhere down the road you're going to meet again. And
yeah, I also wonder how he knew that too. I was curious about where his, because it raises all kind of questions about what Swordsman Fu has been doing.
Well, obviously
he knows the identities of both of them, so somehow.
But he's in the know. He's been laying low, and he heard things, and that was my take anyway.
No, I think you're right. I just feel like you could there. It's just I don't know. It just sort of suggests that there's maybe more to him than what's going on in just the simple cameo. But also the Lolier character kind of throws like he. I think Achi asks what his name is, and he says, "If I told you that, I wouldn't. I wouldn't live as long as I have." And,
if I threw my name around as easily as you do,
yeah, that was it. Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of like, you're just going around telling everybody who you are, and that's why you're running into all these problems.
And then
it makes perfect sense, right?
Year.
Oh, what was that? Kenny?
And then he tells him he'll see him next year. But, Achi thinks he's dying and won't be there next year.
That's true. And I want to get back to that point, actually. But, Kenny, what were you saying?
Oh, no, it's fine.
Oh, okay, no. Yeah, no, it does raise... And again, I'm going to spoil Killer Klans for people who don't see Killer Klans, but his character in Killer Klans gets killed. So I wonder if that's if that's like the interrupter of their annual meeting. But yeah. Did you have a point you were trying to make, Kenny? Or
No.
oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I think those were all the points I was interested in raising. Did anybody have any other thoughts in the film before we end the episode?
Oh, I just have to mention the third master's sword. Like I thought it would be like a sword, but no, he has like a wall rack of swords that he brings with him. He hangs it on the tree and it just all rolls down. It's got like 6 or 7 swords there. It's like, which sword do you want to die by?
Yeah, and his whole. I mean, he kind of demonstrates it. He can even use a tree branch as a sword. Like he doesn't seem terribly picky about the blade. It's more about the swordsman, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I like Yan Shisan's answer to that question.
Yeah, because it's a very Gulong thing, isn't it? To say that, even if you don't have a sword in your hand, if you have a sword in your heart, you can still kill people,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's a very. I think he's that kind of character. Like, and there's another point too, where like when he's using the tree branch, he says, "I've changed, so my sword changed." And it's just these like great little lines like that,
profound things, which probably doesn't really mean much, but it sounds cool, so who cares?
Yeah.
And I like the ending fight scene though. Like, despite what I say, about not really enjoying the style of the choreography, it was still good choreography, and the conclusion to the fight was quite good. I felt it cement. I don't know. Do we care about spoilers that much?
No, we can spoil it. If people are listening this far, I think they've either seen the movie or they don't care that
because the fight ends with the third young master cementing his position as the top swordsman in the martial world, and with Yan Shisan dying. And I like how it's a play on the sort of the whole wuxia ambiguity thing, where people like cross swords and then suddenly everything goes still for a while, and then one person falls over or retreats or whatever, and you think, oh, they've lost, but nope, it's the person who stayed standing the longest, who's actually been stabbed in the heart with the tip of a blade, type of thing. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think third young master, his sword breaks and he drops it, and then Yan Shisan is pointing the tip of his sword at third master's throat, and you think that Yan Shisan has won the fight, and the way they do it is cool because third young master says, well, now you know who's the winner, basically, and he says goodbye, and he walks away, and as he's walking away, you see the little bit of the tip of third young master's sword embedded in Yan Shisan's chest, and he kind of smiles and collapses and says the third young master is still the supreme swordsman. So it's a very interestingly done scene.
It was well done, I thought. Not to just have him slice him to death, but just that little broken point killed him, and you didn't even notice it.
Yeah, I really like the way they did it, and I feel like it also retained sort of the mutual respect that the characters seem to have for each other. It's and again, it's a movie. If you see the Swordmaster, the remake, they redo that scene in a different way, but it's still sort of it's meant to be that same kind of final battle in the end when they take out the confusion of the David Chang character, and it's just a final duel between them. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely would say if people see either Swordmaster. If they see Swordmaster, they should definitely watch this, and if they see this, they should definitely watch Swordmaster, and they should consider reading the book, because the book will fill in a lot of the sort of the gaps and help explain maybe some of the themes, and also I would say I watched the for this discussion I watched the one that they have on Prime. It's available on Prime if people want to watch it, but there's also a Blu-ray version, and that looks quite gorgeous. I was very surprised by the quality of that. I have it on DVD as well, but the Blu-ray is particularly nice. And I think one of the things about Cho Yuen movies, and this movie in particular, that I like is just the visual presentation is very pleasant and well constructed, and you get these gorgeous sort of sets and, you know, like foliage in the foreground, that kind of thing. And I was noticing the difference between watching it on my TV and watching it on my computer. And you do kind of, I feel like the computer screen doesn't quite capture the beauty of what it looks like when it's bigger. So if people can, I would definitely encourage them to try to watch it on as big a screen as they can, just to get the full effect of the movie. But did you guys have any parting thoughts before we end?
No, I enjoyed the movie. I can recommend it to people to watch, but if I do recommend it, I think I'd definitely say don't pay too much attention to anyone who's not the main character, really, because they probably won't be staying that long, and you'll just be confusing yourself if you try to think everyone's important.
Ditto on Kenny's thoughts. Too many people make it confusing, but if you just stick with the main, maybe 5 or 6 people, you're good.
Yeah, and I think that's the take home. It's sort of a confusing cluster of characters, but at the core of it is this very simple story between 2 swordsmen and the Chow Di character, and those are really the you really just need to focus on Chow Di, third young master Yan Shi-san, and Zhao Li, and that's all you really need to keep your concentration on, and everything else is kind of, you know, a flavor. But yeah, so again, the movie is available on Amazon Prime. People can check it out. I think based on this discussion, if we can find Magic Blade and watch that together, that would be another good movie to check out. So maybe, hopefully, down the road we'll be able to do a discussion on that. And I'll be on. I think I'm going to be back on soon with Adam to talk about Torchwood, and I'm going to be doing a discussion of the Sontaran experiment with Adam and Nick. So until then, we'll talk to you later.